All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to First Term. My name is Ryan. I am an LA native. For those of you who don't know who I am, I graduated college with a political science degree, and I kind of worked in a lot of different fields. I worked in entertainment for a little bit. I went to law school for a little while, and now I'm a public insurance adjuster. So I help people with their insurance claims, and I get to see firsthand how the government works in natural disasters. And we help several hundreds of thousands of people over the 50 years our company's been in business kind of handle their insurance claims and make sure that they're not getting taken advantage of by these insurance companies. Anyway, that's just a little bit of an intro. The most important thing is that I'm an American, and today I'm doing something that I didn't think I would do for quite some time, but I feel like in light of recent events, I felt like this was something that couldn't wait any longer and something that I couldn't stay silent any longer. Today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about politics. I think I have a very different perspective, and 26-year-olds have a very different perspective on the world and the way that government works around us. It's constantly changed. It's changed a lot from when I was a kid, where nobody ever talked about it. Nobody wanted to talk about it. It was part of our lives, but not as big and as upfront as it is now. I think some people could argue that social media has had a big role in it. I would definitely agree with that. For better or for worse, it's kept us more informed about our government, our day-to-day life, kind of just the way that the world around us works and how systems of government operate. I think another argument is that we were so young at the time that we didn't, need to know about politics. But it's interesting that, I have cousins who are younger. I have friends who have younger siblings, and they are all kind of more informed politically than I think I ever was. And I think that that's a really interesting thing. I kind of want to premise this podcast, and especially this first episode, by saying that some of you may disagree with what I had to say. Some of you may agree with me. And that's your right as an American. It's my right to use my freedom of speech, to share my opinions and my thoughts with all of you who listen. I just kind of want to share my generation's thoughts on things. I can't speak for everybody in my generation, but I can speak for myself and my experiences. And I want to do better. I want to help us to make our world better and to somehow mend this increasingly large divide between the right and the left, because it's dividing our country in ways that I didn't imagine. It's dividing friendships that I've had. It's just a much more important topic than it ever used to be. And I think that that's a good thing in some ways. And I think in other ways, it can be harmful. Our rights to life, liberty, freedom, and happiness were fought for by patriots who gave everything that they had to guarantee the right that we have those rights in perpetuity until the end of time. And I think it's our job to make sure that every single person, despite their belief, their skin color, sexual orientation, economic class, that everybody's granted those same rights. And I think that there's a lot of topics and things that are brought up on news or brought up on TikTok or Instagram or things that we see that I guess bring up the topic, are those rights infringed upon? And they're things that we question about our government. Anyway, that being said, I want to talk about what may be the single most important topic right now, definitely the most important political topic I can remember in my generation. And that was the assassination of Charlie Kirk, which has sparked controversy kind of all over the world. The first thing that happened, Charlie was speaking. So I don't necessarily agree with all of his views. Some of his views I see have points, but I think that's the really important part here, right? Is that everybody has a right to share their own opinion. And one person's opinion isn't necessarily right or isn't necessarily wrong. But I think we kind of have created this culture where we're like, no, that's wrong and this is right and I'm right and you're wrong. I think we're missing this point that everybody's opinion has value, and we can learn from other people's opinions, even if they're different from our own. And we can use those to make us better and to make us stronger people and to help us, I guess, understand people that have different opinions than us and help us understand why those people have those opinions. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever think that we would be in a country where people shared those thoughts and opinions and they lost their life for it. I don't think political violence, I don't think violence of any kind is ever the answer. I don't think it's right. And I think that what happened was a consequence of this building momentum of finger pointing, exactly what I said before, of this opinion's right and this opinion's wrong. And I don't think that that's necessarily the answer here. I think the answer here is that everybody's opinions have value and we need to listen to them to understand the way the world is working, right? So that there's people on the left and they believe one thing. And we need to understand those people's opinions because it makes us, same thing with people on the right. We need to understand why they think the things that they think because it makes us better. Understanding people, talking to people, debating people is essential to our democracy and to having the right to free speech, things that people fought and died for. Immediately when I heard this happen, I was in an office meeting. I got a lot of texts from friends and things like that. And my first instinct was to obviously go to Twitter or go to TikTok. And that's so interesting that's my first reaction, but that's kind of how we get our information now, for better or for worse. I think for worse, because a lot of it's misinformation or it's specifically targeted to you. So you're getting news that is specifically targeted to you or people's thoughts or reactions that are specifically targeted to whatever this algorithm thinks you would like. And that's such a toxic thing because it like typecasts you in this certain light. So let's say I go on TikTok and somebody sent me a video about an opinion that somebody had on the right, then everything on my TikTok is going to be news or thoughts or opinions on people from the right. I don't hear what people on the left have to say. And that's where I think this divide is happening in our country, where we don't want to hear other people's opinions because we just have listened to all these other people who have opinions, like all these conservative people that have opinions. So then we think that that's the only right way of thinking, and it's not. Same thing with the left. That doesn't mean that those opinions are right or wrong either. When I was sitting there looking and refreshing feed, I just, number one, couldn't believe that this was happening today. I think, I grew up just like any other kid learning about the JFK assassination, Martin Luther King, these people that were iconic, but they grew up they were preaching their ideas in times of extreme political divide and extreme divide throughout the country. I think I knew that we were in a divide period. I think ever since Trump took office, for better or for worse, people have opinions. People hate him or they love him. This big MAGA movement, for better or for worse, has kind of created this big divide in our country. And I don't think that it was an intentional thing, but I think that we just started seeing this shift after towards the end of Trump's first term. And COVID definitely exacerbated it. But it's like, people on the right hate people on the left and they want to constantly attack each other. I grew up in a very different time where, Obama was president. And did I love what Obama was doing? No, I didn't love all the things he was doing, but he knew how to speak to people. And I just feel like the world was in a little bit of a calmer place, where people on the right. I just remember I looked at a picture the other day of Mitt Romney and Obama shaking hands. And it's just like we need to get back to that place. I don't know how we do it. I'm still figuring that out, just like everybody else. But I felt like it was important to come on here and just talk about how I felt, because maybe it's how you felt, or maybe it's how somebody you knew felt, or maybe you don't know how to feel. And that's all okay. But I felt horrible when I saw the news. I think the first thing I thought about was that I'm aware of Charlie. I'm aware of politics. I knew that he had two young kids and a wife. And my first thought was, those kids are 1 and 3 years old. They will never grow up knowing who their dad was. They will never grow up with a father. And for somebody to take that away from another person, let alone an entire family, was disgusting to me. And I felt sad. And I think I felt sad like a lot of other people did. And it was just kind of, after I had found out that he passed, because there was a period where we didn't know, I think there were so many opinions, and I knew that there would be. And I think that that's such a sad thing, is that, like, people immediately weighed in. They immediately weighed in. Jimmy Kimmel, obviously, that's kind of a new polarizing topic right now too, right? Is that he was fired for his comments. And I'm not here to say that his comments were right or wrong. I personally disagreed with his comments, because I don't think that right after somebody died, that's a real thing. I think our first thoughts should be, hey, I feel bad for his family. I feel bad for his wife, his kids. I feel bad for the world that we all literally witnessed. You could go on TikTok and on Twitter especially, and you could see like the video of exactly what happened. And that was a very, very scarring thing, I think, for anybody to watch. And I couldn't believe that people's reaction first was to point fingers, was to say, hey, to look at what the left has caused. They've caused people like the shooter to do what they did, to believe these ideologies, to, pick up arms and go against people. And then so people on the right pointed that finger, and then people on the left said, oh, it's Trump's fault. It's this rhetoric, it's this tyrant, this dictator. I just, somebody died. That's a real thing. And I know people die every day. And I also want to acknowledge that at the same time, a couple hours after or before, I can't remember, there was a school shooting at the same time. And that completely got swept under the rug. And I think that, again, has to do with the way that social media is, that we would rather argue about a catastrophe that happened or something terrible that happened, because everybody would agree that a school shooting is terrible and incorrect and lives were lost. But unfortunately, somebody else died who was a polarizing figure. And so people wanted to sit there and argue about, hey, what he said was disgusting. It was hate speech. Hey, what he said was great. And so we focused on that, and the media picked that up because it was a hotter topic and they got more views and things like that. And it's just crazy that that's the way society has become. It's something that needs to change. And I think it starts with the way that we regulate social media platforms. Obviously, we can't ban social media, right? Preventing freedom of speech is not the answer. Just ask the UK and look at what's going on there, where people are getting thrown in prison for mentioning certain topics or certain things that the government is not okay with. But we can definitely regulate things better. We can push for legislation that would require platforms like TikTok, like X, like Instagram to disclose how their algorithms work. I mean, it's crazy. I'm sitting there at a Dodger game the other night talking with my friends about something, and then you go on TikTok and that's literally what comes up on my screen. And then what I talked about a little bit earlier, where you hear one person on the right's or one person on the left's thoughts on something, and you like it, or a friend sends it to you, and then all of a sudden that's all you see. You don't ever see something from the other side because they want to send you things that you agree with, not that you don't agree with. And so just being open and honest and being able to see how these algorithms work, I think is important. I don't know necessarily if it changes the way things work, but I think that the American people deserve to see the way that certain social media companies and media companies in general target audiences and people, and how they push things to people or don't push things to people. I think we can also require companies to have clear enforceable policies on extreme rhetoric, with penalties for companies that fail to act in taking these videos down quickly or allowing these videos to circulate rapidly. But I also can acknowledge that there's an argument to be had that, it encourages on freedom of speech, that if you ban certain videos that have extreme rhetoric, then where's the regulation? What's to say that I can't, say that this podcast, what I'm talking about right now, is extreme rhetoric? There's a gray area, right? But I think, and also having a third party kind of independently audit how well these platforms are preventing hate speech is another way we could do it. But then the question arises, well, hey, how do we vet who these third-party companies are? How do we know that these third-party companies are honestly not in, or how are we saying that it's not the administration that's currently in office, whether they're Republican or Democrat, that are assigning people to these independent companies that are pushing one way or another? And that's a fair argument, but I think that there needs to be legislation that is brought that clearly defines what hate speech is on social media platforms, so that these companies can target those videos and can down or put some kind of warning before seeing them. And I also think if enough people report a video, that it should be taken down, whether it's right or wrong. I think if you have a community of people that report something, it should be taken down. I just think that there is not enough checks on how these media and social media companies are regulating information to people, how they're providing or pushing information. I just think it needs maybe a little bit of a closer look. But again, it's up to our government kind of to balance freedom of speech and curbing hateful rhetoric. And I think that, unfortunately, well, I'll give you an example. So today I saw an article that Trump was issued a warning to a lot of these, to Disney, to ABC, to some of these big media companies, that if they talk about him in a negative way, that he's going to pull funding from them or ban them. I don't think that's the answer. I think that that's the furthest thing from the answer. But I think that pushing hate speech needs to be monitored. And there's also a lot of groups out there that are pushing speech that is aggressive, that is violent, that is pushing people towards violent. And I think when that happens, or when these things occur, that's when you wind up with these catastrophes that happen, like, the assassination of Charlie Kirk or school shootings. So again, there's a lot of gray area, and there's a lot of ways to look at this, and a lot of questions that need to be asked or need to be raised by people that are in government that are not being raised right now by either side. But jumping back again to the Charlie Kirk situation, while I didn't agree with everything he had to say, I agreed with his message and his desire to peacefully debate people who had different opinions than him. I think sometimes he encroached on the my opinion is the right opinion, your opinion is the wrong opinion, where I don't know if that's necessarily the answer, but I will say that there is nobody in my generation that has ever mobilized my generation to politics, to voting more than he did. And I think that that alone is a very commendable thing. I think even during COVID, I interned at a company called Voting Smarter, where we talked to different political campaigns and we talked to different politicians about their views. We created an app so that people my age, or anybody really, could go online and could swipe right or left on topics that were important to them, and it would match them with a political candidate. And we did this in hopes that it would bring more people to vote in the upcoming election. I think at that time it was the election in 2020, and it would just bring more attention to politics in general. And I think that was a first step towards doing it, but we did it at a much smaller level. Charlie was able to do it at such a large level, bring attention to politics, to bring attention to political issues and to things of our time that are very important. Again, did I agree with all of his answers to things? No. But I agree. I think that it is important for the young generation, for my generation, to be the generation of change, to be passionate about politics, to be passionate about the world around us. But passion does not equate to violence. And using violence to quiet those that disagree with us, I don't think is ever the answer. And unfortunately, there are too many groups or too many things out there that are doing that. And that's got to change. It's got to change. And then having figures, big actors, or political figures that we see on TV or that we watch all the time give political opinions or their thoughts on things that call for violence or call for things that they just don't know about. I think that's another part of it, is that there's a lot of people that we watch on the news or that we watch on TV, or celebrities that we idolize, have political opinions on things that they don't know enough about. Along those lines, I want to share a couple photos of things that I talked about, or things that I saw that I want to talk about. So, this is Hannah Binder. She went to Chapman with me. She just won an Emmy, which is awesome. Her show is phenomenal. I can't even remember the name of it, but I do watch it. It's a comedy. It's great. But she talks a lot about the Israel-Palestine conflict. And it's interesting because she is a white Jewish woman who grew up like I did, very fortunate. And she has gone to multiple human rights summits and multiple things talking about the Israel-Palestine conflict, which I think is, number one, a hot button topic. And it's something that we see a lot of actors talking about, where they, want a ceasefire in Gaza and they're saying free Palestine. Everybody's entitled to their own opinions. You're entitled to support your own opinion. You're entitled to think your own thoughts and feelings, just like I will articulate mine. I am a Jewish American. I am not completely religious, but I think many people would think that I support Israel, which I do. But I think that there is a time and place to talk about certain things. In multiple interviews where she was asked questions about the Israel-Palestine conflict, and she didn't know the answer to that, and she didn't know what was going on there. And I think this unfortunately happens a lot, where people who don't necessarily understand conflicts completely, give their opinions, stages where they know people will watch, and they're figures who are followed, and they don't necessarily know what they're talking about. And, although I am a Jewish American who supports Israel, I can acknowledge that there are rights and wrongs on both sides of this war. And I can also acknowledge that this is a conflict that has been going on for centuries. And I think it has become a politicized issue. But I think to say free Palestine as a Jewish white woman who doesn't necessarily know what she's talking about, it can be very confusing to other people who are white Jewish people or people who just watch it, right? Or people who just watch her. It can be confusing because you think, oh, she knows what she's talking about. She speaks at these human rights summits and she's great. And I'm sure she's a great person. I'm not knocking her as a person. I'm just knocking. I just think that there's a time and a place to do something. And I think when you don't know, I think it'd be one thing if she knew a lot about what was going on and she was talking specifically about those things, then maybe it'd be a better setting, kind of continuing on with that. I was talking about these groups that push extreme political violence. So, as you can see on the screen, Armed Queers Salt Lake City. I think so. I am personally of the belief that if you're gay, if you're transgender, if you're part of the LGBTQ plus community, that you have every right as a human being to be who you want, to love who you want, to if you feel like you were born a woman, but you're in a man's body and you feel like you want to change, that's fine. I have no problem with any of that. I think that everybody is a human being and it is their body, it is their choice. Same thing with abortion, same thing with women's rights. Who is the government to decide these things or to tell people what they can and cannot do with their body, who they can and can't love, who they can and can't affiliate with? I've always been of the belief that the government should intervene in the lives of citizens as little as possible, which is actually a view that a lot of conservatives agree with. But I think that when you have groups of people like this who decide that they want to take up arms and they are angry because there are people on the right and the left who hate each other and they are spewing passionate hate for one type of person or one group of person, people get angry, right? Or they want to blame somebody for, I don't know, getting bullied at school, or they want to blame somebody for not fitting in, or for not appreciating them, or not treating them like everybody else. But I've always been of this belief too, is that if you're different, if you look different, if you act different, if you believe in something that's different, people are going to notice you and they are going to pick on you, or they are going to laugh, or they're going to join you. We need to grow sometimes thicker skin. I don't think that it is right. I was somebody that was bullied in high school and it was not a fun thing. But I think you have to understand that not everybody grew up the same way. Not everybody was raised to be tolerant of other people, to love other people. And that's just kind of how the world works. But I think to get angry and to take up arms and to commit violent acts against people that disagree with you, or to create online groups, or to create in-person groups that promote political violence or promote violence of any kind, is not right. And there is no place for that in this world. And that is how I feel. So that was kind of why I wanted to show this one. Got a couple more. So here's another where, when this was going on, when Charlie was assassinated, the videos, like I said, were very graphic. And I think that Twitter specifically and TikTok specifically were showing up close videos of what happened, different angles of what happened. I could not avoid it. If you were on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, everybody was posting about it. There were different angles of it. You couldn't avoid it. I had to just turn my phone off for the rest of the day, which is a terrible, terrible thing. But we live in this world right now where everybody wants to be first. Everybody wants to be the first click. They want to be the first to show something. They want to get likes. They want to get views. And they don't really care who they offend, what they're showing. And it's a disgusting thing. And so I don't know if this falls in that category, but there was a report from the New York Post that a teacher was showing the assassination videos to 10 and 11-year-old students and telling them that he deserved to die for this hate that he spewed. and for the hate that she believed he spewed, because I don't think that he purposely spewed any hate. I think he said some things that were very divisive and could be viewed by some as not nice, but I don't think it was a purposely hateful act towards any person. But I know that that's an opinion that is contested by many people, and I can understand that. But I think that to show 10 and 11-year-old students, I can imagine being a 10 and 11-year-old in a class where a teacher was showing me what was happening, up close videos of somebody dying. This is not a video game. This was real life. This was a very scarring thing, a very upfront, disgusting thing, a very scary thing for anybody to have to witness. There were multiple videos that I saw of people who were there that were scared that they were going to be next, that this was not just one shot that was fired off. And even after, there were students that keep picturing what happened to him because they saw it happen. And to show this to 10 and 11-year-old students, number one, is very scarring to them and would be very scary as a 10 or 11-year-old. And number two, telling 10, 11-year-olds that somebody deserved to die. I don't know if the teacher purposely, or I don't know if she understood what she was doing or what she was saying, but promoting violence to 10 and 11-year-olds whose brains are not fully developed, it creates this norm for these kids who are growing up, and they think that it's okay that when somebody who they disagree with, or somebody that says things that they don't like, that it is okay to be violent towards them, that it is okay to kill people, that it is okay to hurt people. And it happens a lot with these school shooters too, is that they were taught in school by certain teachers, or they were picked on, they were laughed at for being different, if they were transitioning, if they were gay, if they, I don't know, liked orange, the color orange, and people thought that was weird, or if they were Jewish, like I got made fun of for being Jewish at Catholic schools sometimes. Just for being different, sometimes people can get angry, and the world again is a very different place, and and when you promote violence to people who have a chip on their shoulder, or who grew up kind of with it being okay, or with it being taught to be okay to hurt people who make fun of you or who disagree with you, then you wind up with situations like this, and it's a terrible, terrible thing that has got to stop. And I think you can make the same argument with these groups that are happening, these online groups, these Reddit threads, these TikTok posts. When you promote violence or promote anger, or you say that it is okay or it is justified to kill somebody because they made fun of you, because they said things about a community you belong to, or I just think that it promotes things like this, and it creates things like this, because not everybody has gone to therapy, not everybody knows how to handle their emotions or their feelings or their thoughts, and instead of asking for help, they do this. And I think also it doesn't help when people are throwing around fascism, they're throwing around Hitler, they're throwing around these terms that are very detrimental to society, and people think, okay, well, Trump is Hitler, or Charlie Kirk is Hitler, or this person is, I don't know, Gavin Newsom is a tyrant, he's a dictator, he's a fascist, or Trump's a fascist. I think you really need to learn what the term fascist means, number one. I think you need to understand why the term fascist was ever used in the first place. I think you need to understand who Hitler was, what he did. He killed millions of people. He marginalized groups of people. He put them in internment camps. He spoke hatred about a particular group of people. I think you can argue that there are some Republicans and there are some Democrats that don't like certain groups of people, and they will sit there and they will dig into them. And I think that there's a promotion sometimes on the right to say LGBTQ people or trans people, they should die, they shouldn't exist, they were born a certain way, they should not be mutilating themselves. I say mutilating, I don't believe that they are mutilating themselves, but that is a term that's used sometimes by people on the right. And I think that sometimes gets people angry, and that causes people to create these groups where they feel like they are safe. They are with people that look like them, that have gone through the same process as them. And that's great. That is great to talk to people like that. But when you start talking about violently taking out these people that are creating hate that they feel like, or are making them feel marginalized or little, I think you need to look at the bigger picture, and you need to look at what is violence or killing somebody going to accomplish. I don't think it's going to accomplish what you think it is going to accomplish, and it will put you in prison for the rest of your life, or you will die for doing it. And I just don't think I don't think violence, and I don't think violence is the answer, and I don't think combating hate with more hate is the answer either. But I think when we throw terms like fascist and Nazi and dictator and things like that around, we are telling people that, hey, these are a threat to democracy. These are a threat to our world. These people are a threat to our way of life. Somebody needs to do something. And so people, they have hero complexes. I will admit I have my own hero complex. I want to try to save the day whenever I can. Um, and so I think people they want to take matters into their own hands, and they think, let me kill Hitler, let me kill a fascist, and maybe it will make the world a better place. And one person and my sacrifice in doing that, which means either I go to prison for the rest of my life or I die, is worth it. And it is not. I'm sorry. Nobody is Hitler. Nobody is putting people in internment camps and killing people in large groups of people. There is nobody that is particularly telling you and forcing you to live a certain way of life. Now, there are government policies and legislations that make things difficult, but nothing is impossible. We live in a world where things, nothing is impossible. And anything's possible. Look at Obama. He has the greatest story I've ever seen to the path to presidency. And I think that it is something to be admired. And you can really accomplish anything in this world. And I know that sometimes, I mean, politics is very important, and being informed about what's going on is very important. But I think that we have to understand that sometimes these policies or these things that politicians are coming up with, or legislation that is passed, we need to think about, how does it affect us? I know sometimes policies are passed that we strongly disagree with, but that is what we should do. We should disagree. We should go to our government officials and we should say, this is wrong. I believe this is wrong. I am going to, organize a group to peacefully protest. I am going to talk to my government official and tell them how strongly I disagree. But the call to violence, or the call to do things in a certain way that are hateful, is not the answer. Anyway, that's my spiel on what happened and how I felt about it. I think it's a terrible thing. I think it is something I still think about, and I think that the way that Charlie was able to mobilize my generation is something that I would like to do. It is why I'm on here. It is why I am sharing my opinions. It's a very scary time to share your opinions, but I think if this assassination taught me anything, it is that life is very short, and that if you think you can do something to help people, just give people a different thing to think about. Freedom, peace, love, to love each other, to spread kindness, to be kind to one another, even if we disagree. It's something that I felt like I had to do, and it's something I feel like I have to do. And every episode, I will be sharing my thoughts on current events, but I will also be trying to promote kindness, even if I disagree with somebody's opinion. Kindness for everybody that's listening to this, because we are all human beings and we should all love each other. And yeah, and so I really think that the way in which we have discourse, and the way in which we debate each other, talk to each other about politics, about life, about anything in life that's important to you, have kindness, do it with kindness, and don't be violent. Don't kill people. I mean, it seems very simple, and don't encourage people to kill people. Don't try to justify a killing. Killing is not the answer, unless it is somebody that has killed thousands of people, or is infringing upon your right to life. If somebody is holding you hostage, or it's in self-defense, that is not what I am talking about. I'm talking about violence or killing people who disagree with you. That is never the answer. And I think that's the biggest thing we should be taking away from this. My prayers are with Charlie's family, his kids, everybody in the world that witnessed that, everybody in the world that's sitting online arguing with somebody else right now, stop, take a minute to think about the other side, take a breath, walk around, tell the people close to you that you love them, think about what it means to love somebody, and then go back to whatever you were going to do. That's my message. And I think this podcast is going to cover a lot of current events. I will be talking about a lot of things. Again, like I preface, things that you will disagree with, things that you may agree with. And I just want to make a episode, a podcast, something that's listenable for people who are of my generation, something that's easy to understand, something that's easy to digest from somebody that is very much in the middle politically. Yeah, I think there needs to be more of a voice of unity, of bringing people together, of loving each other. And I think that's what I'm going to try to do. And yeah, I think I'm very excited to enter to this new chapter with all of you who are listening, to bring back moderate conversation about topics and to just get more involved in the community around me, and to get more involved in what's important to people and what's important in life, which is promoting love, peace, kindness, happiness, and all of our rights to freedom. And so I'm glad I could share my thoughts with you. Hopefully you enjoyed listening, and we'll catch you next time.